Roger, Heathrow Tower. This is Trams A501 cleared for takeoff. Contact Shanwick 120.6, Squawk 2400. Clearance received, Skipper.
OK, Mike. PA call, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is First Officer Shan speaking. We're sorry about the delay, but we are now cleared for takeoff. Will the cabin crew please take their seats?
Body gear steering.
$50 knots. Speed building.
I have rudder steering.
80 knots. V1. Rotate. Positive rate of climb established.
Gear up.
Gear up selected.
Landing lamps.
Landing lamps up and off.
Flaps in, check fully up and in.
Check fully up and in.
Altimeter set 1013.2 millibars.
Set 1013.2 millibars.
Set 1013.2 millibars. Hey, see that bird swarm below?
Some flood. Too late.
That's odd, Skipper. I'm getting...
Fire action number 4 engine. No, correction. All lights on. Fire action on all engines.
The Destruction Factor. 2 plays by James Follett. The second, World Without Fire, with T.P. McKenna, Paul Copley, and Rosalind Adams.
None of you have a shred of evidence to support your claim that it was the Exon Strain plants in the climatorium that caused the jumbo to crash. That's why you're not being asked to give evidence to the inquiry.
But I saw the whole thing. I was on the admin roof at Elco when Max and Howard opened the climatorium dome immediately under the jet. Those birds were at least 100 yards away. They couldn't have caused that crash in a million years.
Oh, for God's sake, Laws, the government can't expect to keep this quiet.
The government, Mr. Flinders, is not interested in stirring up unnecessary concern over the dangers from a plant that has not been fully evaluated.
Ugh.
And you, Miss Exon, do you want your father to be remembered as the creator of a plant that led to the deaths of 253 people in one of the worst air disasters this country has known?
My father killed himself when he realised that his plant would endanger mankind and not benefit it as he had dreamed. If we do nothing, Mr. Blowers, it won't be 253 people on our consciences, but 250 million in the first year, another 250 million in the second, and after that, the rest of mankind.
An opinion, Miss Exon.
You've sat in on the committee meetings, Blois. You know damn well what the dangers are.
Unproven, Mr. Flinders.
That jet hit a giant pocket of almost pure oxygen that rose out of the climatorium when we opened the dome.
All 4 engines seemed to blow up in midair. Birds couldn't have caused that.
Experts think it's possible. Rapid overheating of the combustion chambers. Your attention was drawn to the jet after the explosion when the damage had been done. Besides, the wreckage of the engine fan discs were choked with the remains of birds.
Because the jet came down through the bird swarm after the explosion.
Save your breath, Denise. He doesn't want to believe you. It could be an election year. The government wants peace and tranquility on the face of the land. We can always publish our own version of the crash.
I wouldn't advise it.
Oh, why not?
Don't forget that both of you and Howard Rogers are serving on a government committee that is looking into the whole problem of the Exon Strain plants. It has discussed evidence relating to the plants provided by government scientists working in government laboratories and has met in government offices.
Rubbish. We provided 90% of the evidence from my findings.
Perhaps, but you might find that hard to prove in court.
What exactly are you threatening us with, Mr. Blowers?
I'm merely asking you to consider the consequences of, to use the legal jargon, communicating information to persons unauthorized to receive it, Mr. Flinders. You better have this. It's a copy of the recording made by Tango Alpha's flight deck voice recorder, and this is a transcript of the same recording so that you'll know who is speaking. Now listen carefully, and you'll hear the captain and the co-pilot refer to the bird swarm a few seconds before the tape goes blank. I mustn't take up any more of your time. Think about what I said. Mr. Rogers, how do you do?
Hello, Howard. How did it go?
Well,
What's upset our little civil servant friend? I've had an interesting time. Now, I talked to several transatlantic airways engineers. They wouldn't commit themselves, but I got the distinct impression that the below-decks opinion is that it would have to be a 1 in 10 billion chance for birds to knock a 747 off the sky. They took me up on a flight in their simulator. It's fascinating. The whole flight deck actually tips up on takeoff. Why the odd expression?
It was a bird strike. Blowers left us a recording. Tango Alpha's flight deck crew saw the bird swarm just before the crash.
That's the cassette. We haven't played it yet.
Isn't that good news, Denise?
Those birds were nowhere near the aircraft. I keep seeing the same scene over and over again. Every detail. The explosion, the bodies...
Yes, I know, love, I know.
Have you got a tape recorder?
Left-hand drawer of my desk.
Ah.
Blowers threatened us with legal action if we said anything about the possibility of Daddy's plants causing the crash.
But he can't.
He can and will.
Standard left-hand seat, graduated power takeoff, Mike. Okay, skipper. Hold the control column slightly forward of neutral and call me. Speed building, 80 knots, B1, rotate, and positive rate of...
According to the transcript here, that's Diamond, the
Then stand
captain
by for
speaking.
gear up on my command.
The other voice is, what is it, Chand, yes, Chand is the co-pilot.
The aircraft to a standstill on the brakes. Give me spoilers and full reverse without...
It sounds like the pre-takeoff briefing.
State of the engines.
Understood. Wind on a bit.
We're sorry about the delay, but we are now cleared for takeoff. Will the cabin crew please take their seats?
Body gear steering.
God. So creepy.
Speed building. I have rudder steering. 80 knots. B1.
Let's take off.
Positive rate of time established. Gear up. Gear up selected. Landing lamps. Landing lamps up and off. Lamps in. Check fully up and in. Check fully up and in. Altimeter set 1013.2 millibars. Set 1013.2 millibars. Set 1013.2 millibars. Hey, see that bird swarm below? Something's right. Too late for that side, Skipper. I'm getting fire action on the pressure. No correction. All lights on. Fire action on all engines.
So, it was a bird strike.
Something doesn't make sense. Who was it who mentioned the bird swarm?
Oh, that was Diamond, the captain. Let's see. Yes, here we are. Hey, see the bird swarm below.
Yeah, well, he didn't sound very worried, did he?
No.
I mean, if the bird swarm was likely to endanger the jet, don't you think he'd sound much more concerned? Let's play that bit again.
13.2 millibars. Set 1013.2 millibars. Hey, see that bird swarm below?
You see, he's merely passing a comment. He knew that there was no danger from the birds.
Hey, see that bird swarm below? Something's off.
Howard's right. He doesn't sound a bit worried, does he?
No, of course he wasn't. The flight deck of a 747 is perched on top of the first-class section. Downward visibility, especially when climbing, isn't marvellous. And yet the captain and the co-pilot both saw the bird swarm shortly after takeoff, which must mean that the birds were a long way off.
Now, I've given scientific evidence to many courts and inquiries as an expert witness. And mind you, unless you're on 100% safe ground, a skilled counsel can tie you up in knots with your own facts and figures.
Hang on, I've got a layout of the labs and surrounding area here somewhere. Now look, the entire Earlco layout, the admin block, my office where we are now, and here, 100 yards away, Complex B and the climatorium. And the climatorium is less than 2 miles from the end of the runway they were using that day. They're bound to at least listen to us at the inquiry now.
Two things. First, we won't be invited to give evidence. And second, the flight engineer saw something as well. Now, look, here. His name was Wayne, you see. That's odd, Skipper. I'm getting blank, and then he was interrupted by the fire alarm.
Point taken.
See that?
Show me. That's old Skipper I'm getting. It sounds as if he was looking at his flight panel or whatever it is flight engineers have to look at.
No, he wouldn't be looking at it. Not during takeoff. He'd turn his seat away from the panel and sit facing forward behind the co-pilot, wearing a safety harness. Flight deck crews are given full harness, unlike passengers whom the airlines consider safe with a single lap strap.
What's the matter?
Let me try something. Oh, damn. Now, this is it. Listen.
What?
Now, what did those noises sound like to you?
A sort of metallic noise, a clicking, followed by an electric drill.
Yes, the clicking noise was the crew releasing their harness buckles. And that electric drill sound was something I heard in the simulator. The flight engineer has a motor-driven seat that moves on rails in front of his panel. You see, they release their harnesses, push them out of the way. Now, listen again. Listen. And the flight engineer swivels his seat round to his panel and runs the seat along the rails. Now, Denise was right. He was looking at his panel immediately before the explosion and not paying any attention to the bird swarm. He's the one with the engine's performance instruments. And he saw something odd about his readings when the bird swarm was still a long way off.
Of course. If the aircraft hit the oxygen bubble, the first thing that would most likely happen is that the engine temperature gauges would shoot off the scale.
And that tape is our proof.
Very nice piece of deductive reasoning, dear boy.
And where does it get us if they won't listen?
We tell Blores. And if he won't listen, we call a press conference in the climatorium and blow this whole business of the Exon Strain wide open. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is an unusual place, isn't it? Rather like the interior of a planetarium, only larger. It's called a climatorium. Now, in here, it's possible to recreate the weather conditions of anywhere in the world. It can simulate the climatic conditions that existed on this planet before man appeared. Or it can create the ice age that will be upon us within the next 10,000 years. Sunlight is provided by the cluster of high-pressure xenon lights you see hanging from the gantry at the top of the dome. Now, we told the computer that we were entertaining the press, and it agreed to provide us with a warm spring day in the Azores. Reluctantly. By the way, this is Denise Exon, the daughter of Ralph Exon, who was, until his tragic recent suicide, the technical director here at Elco and an old colleague of mine. This is Howard Rogers, Elco's general manager, and Denise Exon's fiancé. Now, growing over here, we have 10 of the unusual new plants that are spreading wild across the country. The Exon Strain. To have too many growing together would be extremely dangerous.
Are they the plants the government issued warning posters about, Mr. Flinders?
They're the ones. You see, it was a deliberately low-key campaign because the government refuses to accept the true danger facing civilization from these plants. That is why you are here now, so that you can be informed of the dangers. Oh, Denise, would you like to start at the beginning, please?
Yes, of course. My father was a man haunted by a nightmare and obsessed by a dream. The nightmare was the memory from his days with the United Nations of starving men, women and children in the poor countries of the world. And his dream was to see those deprived people fed. Upon his return to this country, he became technical director of Elco and secured funds to build this laboratory complex B. This climatorium was used to test new fertilizers, which is Elco's main interest, as they're one of the largest fertilizer exporters in the country. Last year, he started work on a new project that was such a closely guarded secret that not even I knew what he was doing. He subjected seeds to radiation and succeeded in producing a plant mutation, a new form of plant life that grows so quickly that it can produce a huge protein-rich crop of seeds from one seed in 4 weeks. The Exon Strain. The new miracle food. Except that it wasn't. If there are plants in hell, they'll probably be like the plants that my poor father created.
Denise and I found some growing in a wood near here. That was before we realised what they were. We took one to our flat and put it in the bedroom. Later, I went into the bedroom smoking a cigar. Pushing the bedroom door open was the last thing I remembered before waking up in hospital.
There was a great whoosh from upstairs. I heard Howard cry out. He was lying in the hallway and everything in the bedroom was blazing.
Howard was lucky. He escaped because he didn't go into the room. But Mr. and Mrs. Downs weren't so lucky. There were all those people at the old people's home. There were several other people who died in various dawn fires during last month.
You mean that there isn't a dawn arsonist?
Only the Exon Strain. That's your dawn arsonist. People, you see, used to see them growing wild round here and take them home.
But how can a plant possibly cause fire?
During daylight, all plants release oxygen into the atmosphere through their leaves. It's part of a complex food production system of the leaf called photosynthesis. Indeed, it was plants that gave us our atmosphere its 20% oxygen content in the first place. A process that took over 2,000 million years. Now, one Exon Strain can produce such staggering quantities of oxygen that it can rapidly convert the atmosphere in a small room, such as a bedroom, to a 50% oxygen content. Yes, under those conditions, a spark is sufficient to trigger a conflagration that incinerates everything inflammable in the room. Bedclothes, carpets, furniture, even wallpaper. Everything that can burn will burn.
Yes, but what has this got to do with the crash of Tango Alpha?
Please, gentlemen. Sorry, someone asked, what is this to do with the jumbo crash? Very well. 2 weeks ago, at the time of the crash, we had 17,000 Exon Strain plants growing in here. The oxygen build-up became dangerous. So the dome was opened, which resulted in a huge invisible cloud of oxygen rising into the still air, right in Tango Alpha's path. Well, ladies and gentlemen, oxygen and kerosene make an extremely explosive mixture. But Tango Alpha is only the beginning. Unless we act now, we will be overtaken by a long chain of catastrophes far worse than the terrible Tango Alpha disaster. If the Exon Strain is allowed to spread, it can double the oxygen of the Earth's atmosphere in a few years.
How serious would that be?
Yes. We'll gradually become hyperactive. We won't live so long. Our crops will fail because oxygen is a deadly poison to all plant life. The whole fabric of our civilization will literally crumble as steel structures rust away to dust. What meat there is will rot as soon as it's killed. And that's only the beginning. The survivors will have to learn to live in a world without fire. But the chances are that natural fires will finish them off anyway. The forests will be destroyed by lightning and will never grow again. You see, Ralph Exon realized that his plants would be the only living things on Earth at the end of the century.
Is that why he killed himself?
We don't know. But I do know that Daddy wasn't a coward. He created the Exon Strain, and we know that he was desperately looking for a way of destroying it.
Can it be destroyed?
Yes. If you people can persuade the government to take immediate action, but it has to be immediate. Birds adore Exon Strain seeds. They can sense them from miles away. They swallow them whole, and their body heat cracks the seed, which enables them to germinate rapidly once they've passed out of the bird's body. Now, we've removed the seed pods from the Exon Strains growing in here. But the plants still have a strong smell, which is what we suspect attracts the birds. Now, just a moment. Can we have the roof open, please? You see? The entire dome hinges open like the petals of a giant flower. Listen carefully. Birds. sense the presence of the sea. In 2 months, the main bird migration will start. We have 2 months to destroy every Exon Strain plant in the country to prevent it spreading throughout the world.
Well?
One paragraph on the back page.
Oh, no.
Oh, as it's my week for cooking, I'll stop at a takeaway. That's odd.
This story doesn't even mention our names.
Which means the editor's been got at. Which also means that the story will get the same treatment in tomorrow morning.
What does 4 large men in 1 small car mean to you?
Police. I wonder if you noticed them.
Oh, I noticed them when we left Earlco, and they stopped when I stopped outside the newsagents.
Do our police use foreign cars?
When it suits them.
Right. That is it.
Denise, what are you planning to do to those men?
I'm not having them sitting on our tail making snide remarks about my driving.
She's waving them down and they're stopping.
Crazy girl.
Headstrong.
Well, I suppose 4 of them can look after themselves. But why should the law be interested in us?
Probably because I ignored this document. Take a look.
When was it served?
Before the press conference.
Oh, hell. Well?
Police.
It figures.
They want to arrest us. Quite polite, really. The older one has a sense of humour. Protective custody, he called it. We get the custody, they get the protection.
What are they waiting for?
Well, for me to get the car home, of course. They don't want the bother of being responsible for it.
Oh. I like that.
Max had this served on him this morning. It's an injunction forbidding us to go ahead with the press conference.
Yes, as I'm the one named on the injunction, however. You two have nothing to worry about.
Nothing to worry about? Have you any idea what they can do to us if they prove that we passed classified information to the press?
Mr. Blowers, Prime Minister.
OK, Edkin, toss him in. A disaster, Blowers.
I did my best, Prime Minister.
And your best is having them held by the police for 3 days.
You said that it was essential that you had Exon's papers and that you didn't care what methods were used to get them.
Legal methods, Blowers. I didn't say anything about breaking the law.
You didn't say anything about not breaking the law.
Damn it, I shouldn't have to. Technically, those papers belong to Earlco. Exon was their technical director and a company employee.
If Earlco wanted those papers, their name would have had to have gone on the court order. You wanted their name kept out of this at all costs.
How much longer do you think we can sit on the story? A week? 2 weeks? How much longer can we rely on editors to cooperate when they're on the phone day and night demanding to be allowed to go ahead?
I suggest we keep the campaign against the plant at its present level.
Posters outside police stations telling people not to take them home? No, we're going to have to do a lot more than that. If that plant is as big a menace as that scientist... Flinders says it is. Now, I've got a plan, which I want you to implement, but it's vital that you do everything in your power to keep Earlco's name clean and to avoid a lot of speculation into the reasons for Exon's suicide.
That depends on how much power I have, Prime Minister.
It'll be considerable, Blowers. Quite considerable.
Someone's been in here.
Don't be daft.
Someone broke in here while we were in police custody. I sensed it as soon as I entered the room.
What's the matter?
Oh, Denise thinks we've had burly burglars rampaging through the house.
She's probably right. All the papers in your father's desk have gone, Denise.
Oh, no, it's all right. I locked them in the filing cabinet last week.
We've had a cursory look at them, Denise, but they won't help solve the problem of how to deal with the Exon strain. I mean, your father never got that far.
I'll see who that is.
I'm going to go through them document by document until I find out why he didn't get very far and why he was driven to suicide. Will you help me, Max, please?
Of course I will, my dear.
Alfred Blowers, the Prime Minister's personal scientific advisor, has come to offer a grovelling apology for the 3 days we've spent manacled to a dungeon wall.
I'm sorry I wasn't at the police station when you were released. They looked after you?
Oh, his crusts of stale bread were poked through the bars each morning without fail.
Shut up, Howard.
You'll be pleased to hear that the charges against you are being dropped.
Oh, we guessed that an hour ago when the fuzz turned us out.
At 3 p.m., the Prime Minister will be declaring a state of emergency to deal with the Exon strain, and the press will be authorised to go ahead with the story on the illegal press conference you held.
There was nothing illegal
Hold on a minute, Howard. So the government's finally woken up to the dangers.
It was aware of them all the time. It just didn't want to be stampeded into premature action.
So what action is it going to take now?
That's up to you, Mr. Flinders. Your name has been suggested as the one to head the campaign to wipe out the Exon Strain.
Good Lord.
As you were the one beating a big drum over the Exon Strain, you were the obvious choice.
Oh, which puts the government in a good light with the public when the full story comes out, right?
Do you want the job?
I'll be in sole command.
With me as your liaison officer between the government and the armed forces, if they have to be called in.
There's the rub.
With Denise and Howard as my paid assistants.
If you wish. I'm also required to collaborate with you on the initial drafting of a set of emergency measures.
Right. We'll start with the requisitioning of Elco's Complex B laboratories.
That won't be possible. This doesn't involve Elco, and there are plenty of government-owned laboratories...
What the hell do you mean? Of course it involves Elco. And if we're to beat the Exon Strain, we're going to need that climatorium. It's the only one in the world. All research must be concentrated in that complex, okay?
Okay. I'll arrange for a team of plant specialists to be moved in. It might be an idea if all Exon's papers were handed over for them to look at.
What papers?
I understand that he did a lot of his work in this house.
Oh, we used to do some work here late at night.
Then it's likely that there could be valuable findings.
You're absolutely right, Blawes. Looking through those papers will be my first priority.
You'll be much too busy, Mr. Flinders.
And you'll be too busy to stop me, Mr. Blawes. You see about requisitioning Complex B, and I'll be in touch in an hour to see about drafting those emergency regulations. Blawes was right. I'm going to be far too busy to go through all these papers.
And we don't know what we're looking for.
A clue as to why Dad... Well, any clue, any paper that doesn't make sense.
Here's an interesting carbon. A memo from your father, Sir Miles Stratton.
Chairman of Elco.
Yes. It is vital that you reverse the decision taken by the directors.
What decision?
Doesn't say, but it's stated a few days before he killed himself. We're going to have to put these papers in chronological order for the... Hello. There's an envelope from Elco head office. Memo from Sir Miles Stratton to Ralph Exon dated the day before Exon committed suicide. This must be the last of your father's papers. Dear Exon, I'm sorry, but the decision by the board of directors taken at their last meeting regarding Project D10 is to be implemented immediately. I wonder what he was talking about. What decision?
I think I found it. Item 6 on the agenda. It was unanimously decided that Project D10 be abandoned forthwith. Action by Accounts Department. No more payments to be made to cover research costs for D10. Action by Mr. R. Exon. All papers, notes, specimens relating to D10 to be destroyed. All specialised laboratory equipment developed for D10 to be broken up and sold. All correspondence relating to D10 to be destroyed. Action by personnel. All research staff working on D10 that cannot be transferred to other projects to be made redundant.
So that's why he killed himself. The funds he desperately needed to find a solution to the plant he had unwittingly unleashed on the world had been withdrawn. He must have been the loneliest and most frightened man in the world during those last few days.
If only he told me what was happening.
He wasn't the sort of man to confide his problems in anyone.
Hello? Yes, he's here. It's Blowers for you. He's calling from the climatorium.
Yes, I'll take it. Yes, Blawes? Are you sure? Well, we never studied the videotapes that carefully. We'll be right over.
No, the picture's too blurred. I can't make out any of them. Hold it. Starling or blackbird?
They're resident birds.
Not necessarily, old boy.
Haven't we got a better videotape than this one?
Hang on. Let me see. Recorded from camera 4 with close-up lens. Yes, this one's probably better.
Well, let's have it then. Right.
Ah, yes, much better. That bird with the flashes on its wings is a jay. And there's a definite hen blackbird. Sparrows, of course, dozens of them.
I'd have thought it was rather a large seed for a sparrow to catch.
If they can hold it, they can swallow it.
Look at the speed at which that wood pigeon's eating.
Damnable creatures, you wouldn't believe the destruction they can cause.
But a resident bird.
Hold it.
Yep.
There, top of the picture.
A house martin?
No, the house martin hasn't got such a pronounced forked tail and swept-back wings. Can you play the tape slowly so that we don't lose it? Hirundo rustica, the swallow. Stay in the picture. Definitely a swallow. It's gone. Run the tape at normal speed.
We didn't see if it was actually eating those seeds. Maybe it joined in to see what all the fuss was about.
No, it's eating them all right. It's back in shot.
But the swallow is an insect feeder.
Look, old boy. I'm only an amateur, but I'm pretty certain that those ornithologists will back me up tomorrow. It's true that the migrant birds are mostly insect feeders, but birds are great opportunists. They'll eat anything going. And it's known that the migrant birds switch from insects to seeds towards the end of the summer to build up their body fats for the long flight south.
Well, Blores, it looks as if you and I had better sit down and draw up that list of emergency regulations for the Prime Minister.
Number 5's going to cause a stir in legal circles. I'm not sure that my colleagues will agree to the concept of a minimum fine, Flinders. Certainly not one of this magnitude.
Mr. Flinders thought it essential, sir. I tried...
So do I, which means that I'll have to be extra persuasive. OK, I'm making a TV broadcast immediately after the Cabinet meeting. I dare say the media will be screaming for a spokesman after my broadcast, so you'd better stay in London for the rest of the evening, Flinders.
5 seconds.
Quiet in the studio, please.
Stand by, Grams. Stand by, Telecine 1. And cue.
Caption. Fade caption. Camera 2, tighten on plant. Nice. Nice. Hold.
Stand by, camera 1.
Fade music. Cue 1.
Good evening. At midnight tonight, the government is introducing the toughest legislation this country has ever known to combat the gravest danger it has ever faced. Well, these were the words spoken by the Prime Minister in his unprecedented broadcast to the nation just before this programme. Unprecedented because Mr. Craig went on to say that the present campaign against the Exon strain has been too timid, that it had been a case of doing too little, nearly too late.
Stand by, camera 3.
Now, with me in the studio is Max Flinders, the scientist in charge of the new organisation
Q3
set up to deal with the Exon strain. Mr. Flinders, how would you answer those who say that these emergency measures are too harsh?
The 10,000 minimum fine for the unlawful cultivation of the Exon strain?
Yes. For the benefit of those who missed the Prime Minister's broadcast, the new regulations give unlimited powers to the police and the army to destroy Exon strain plants wherever they're found, and for massive minimum fines for those caught growing the plant.
Well, the fine won't affect more than a handful of irresponsible people. The positive side of the new regulations is that the government will be paying a £2 reward for every one of these plants taken to a police station.
Yes, indeed. But do you not feel that the concept of automatic minimum fines is contrary
This plant is contrary to life on this planet. It's the government's belief that £2 per plant is sufficient incentive for people to go out, search for Exon strain plants, and take them to their nearest police station, where they will be paid immediately.
Starting tomorrow?
Starting at midnight tonight and continuing for 3 weeks until midnight on the last day of July.
So the plant is safe to touch?
Perfectly safe.
How many plants are there growing wild in the country?
That's a tough one. It could be as little as 10 million or as many as 100 million.
So stamping them out is going to be an expensive business?
The cost is the least of our worries. The one thing we haven't got is time.
How long have we got?
5 weeks at the outside.
And if we fail?
We mustn't.
But there's always the remote possibility, is there not?
If we fail to eradicate this plant, it won't be a disaster for just this country or even the countries of the European community. It will be a planetary catastrophe that not even the combined resources of all the member countries of the United Nations will be able to combat.
Thanks for coming to collect me, Denise.
I saw the broadcast in the reception.
You think I went over the top?
No, Max. I finished going through Dad's papers.
Oh. Anything?
The Alco Board of Directors knew nothing about the danger from the plant when they pulled the rug from under him. Which makes me all the more determined to find out why they did it to him. Those bastards drove him to suicide.
Funny thing, but before tonight's broadcast, I was warned that I'd be faded out. I brought up the subject of your father's suicide. They said as the inquest hadn't been held yet, there was a danger of the matter being sub judice.
That's all?
That's exactly what I thought. Someone in a position of influence is exerting pressure. You know, it might be worth you scratching around to see if you can uncover a link between Elko and senior members of the government.
Dad hated working for Elko.
That I can understand. Did he ever tell you why?
No.
Elko was one of the largest fertilizer and feedstuff producers in Europe. Now, for a concern which is forever boasting in its commercials about its services to third world countries, I find some aspects of its trading questionable.
Such as?
Well, you work for them. Where do they buy the raw ingredients for their fertilizer products from?
Well, the phosphates are shipped in bulk carriers from Morocco.
And the trace elements from Central Africa. Elko's wealth, in fact, the entire overproducing agricultural wealth of Europe, is dependent on the supply of cheap chemicals from poor countries.
But processed fertilizers shipped back to the underdeveloped countries in the right mixtures for whatever crops they intend growing, and that's technology helping them.
Has Elko actually ever built a processing plant in those countries supplying the raw chemicals? One day, the phosphate-producing countries will wake up and form themselves into an organization to call the tune, just as the oil-producing countries did. Then we'll have 1974 all over again, only worse. Because food is more essential than oil.
If we survive.
Yes. Any developments while I've been away?
The plant research team have moved into Complex B. A huge radio mast's gone up on the admin roof, and they've turned the car park into a heliport.
Sounds like friend Blawers has been busy. You better take me straight there.
You need a good night's sleep, Max.
I don't trust that hatchet man. I will sleep better when I've seen what he's been up to.
And over there is Section 10, who will be processing information from all police stations on where plants are found and quantities they're found in.
Very good, Blawers. Why was the Elko sign taken off the roof?
Section 11, helicopter communications. Section 12, police liaison, in case there's trouble the police can't handle. With the plants worth £2 each, there could be dust-ups between landowners and search parties.
You've done a first-class job, but why was the Elko sign taken down?
We requisitioned the place on your instructions. It's no longer under Elko control.
You mean Elko didn't want their name to be picked up day after day by a permanent squad of TV cameras? Who asked you to take it down?
It was my idea. I put Howard Rogers in charge of the climatorium, as he knows how it works.
And he agreed?
Oh, yes. He's working in there now on an idea of his for a machine to detect the plants from the air.
Okay. Now switch on.
We'll try it at low amplification first. Right, now swing the mic array slowly.
Yep.
That's it.
It works.
Now, let's not open the champagne just yet. Now move the mics to one side.
Looks hopeful, though.
What's all this, then? Someone giving you an oscilloscope to play with?
Hello, Max. It's not an oscilloscope. It's the world's first Exon Strain detector. And it works.
We think.
What?
Well, it's an adaptive parametric amplifier, sir. Used for the detection of submarines at extreme long range.
Piece of sonar equipment?
Yes, sir. Well, I fitted it with this mic array, a cluster of digital gun microphones that can be slung beneath the helicopter. The amplifier has a discriminator facility that can be programmed to respond only to sound patterns that match a pre-recorded tape. All other sounds are ignored.
And it works.
Well, it seems to work on that group of Exon Strain growing over there.
Come on, show me.
It might help if we increase the sunlight to stimulate them into faster growth.
No. Leave it at this level. All right.
Right, you see those random dots on the screen? Now, all the operator has to do is tune them into a straight line, like so. And then you read off which microphone you're getting the response from. Now, mic 6, and as you can see, mic 6 is pointing straight at those exons.
This is incredible. Will the noise of a helicopter have an adverse effect on the detector's sensitivity?
I don't know, but I doubt it. I mean, the microphones are only interested in sounds originating from where they're pointing.
I read about these super-sensitive sound detectors. I thought a few of them might be ideal for screening inaccessible parts of the country.
Rubbish.
Eh?
If this thing works, I shall need 500 models to screen the entire country.
Well, this is the only one in existence. Friend Blowers requisitioned it from the Navy.
If we can make one, we can make 500. How long have you been without sleep?
Oh, about 15 hours, I suppose.
Can you manage another 2? There's a Sea King helicopter in the car park. It's been placed at my disposal. Get this thing installed temporarily, then get some sleep. We'll go out first light to test it.
Microphone 2, bearing 083 degrees, our heading. Inclination 30.
Looks like that spinny on the inside of the stream's bend. We're getting a positive reading from those woods. Can you set down in that field near the trees?
Yes, sir. But I'll keep on running in case the ground's soft.
We're going to reconnoiter those woods. 10 minutes.
Very good, sir.
It's probably a whole colony. I don't think the detector is sensitive enough to detect individual plants.
Individual plants are going to be our biggest problem once the first phase of cleaning the country is complete.
It looks pretty dense in there. Shall we look for a path?
Now we'll go straight in. You're not frightened of a few nettles, are you? Listen. Come on!
Oh, damn tree roots everywhere.
This slope must lead down to the stream.
Would there be enough light in there for them?
Plenty. Hold it!
What?
On your left. That clearing.
Oh, hell. If that's typical of the country, then we're too late. How many do you reckon? Couple of thousand?
I wouldn't even like a guess. Let's take a closer look. Down!
Some idiot thinks we're rabbits or something. Hey! You nearly killed us!
I'll make sure next time if you don't get off my land. I give you 5 seconds to get moving.
What?
1.
Listen, you idiot! I'm a government scientist investigating the
trespassing after those plants.
Oh,
mine.
It's your duty to take them to your nearest police station, you hear me?
That's what I'll be doing as soon as my men arrive. Us and no one else. So clear off.
Gee, come on. Come on, let's do as he says.
I'm not letting some lunatics.
Come on. Oh.
Each pin represents 1,000 plants handed in.
So my estimates were way out.
Certainly looks like it.
They were intelligent guesses rather than estimates, and not so intelligent, it seems. I had no idea that the wretched thing would become so widespread in such a short time. Damn birds.
Sir!
What is it, Corporal?
Sorry to trouble you, sir. A report from Section 12. There's a major incident developing on Wimbledon Common.
What it's turned into.
Helicopter Red 6 reports that the police are in trouble near the lake, sir. 6 constables are in trouble.
Lord, we'll have to let the army move in.
Captain, give your helicopters the go-ahead.
Right, sir.
4 CS bombs each.
Hello, Red 4, ready. 4 CS bombs on main crowd.
Helicopter's in trouble!
7 police officers, an army helicopter pilot, and 27 civilians. 35 people killed in the worst civil disturbance in this country in years.
Prime Minister, no one would have been killed if that young thug hadn't fired a shotgun at the helicopter.
Yes. As many as that. Okay, I'll tell them. Surprise, surprise. Your operations room have just phoned through the final figures for the number of plants handed in today. 8 million. What have you got to say to that, Mr. Flinders?
It's far too early to draw conclusions.
Let's see how this phase goes before we close down schools, offices, and factories. Supposing we succeed in destroying every plant in the country, what about the seeds that we miss, and the birds miss? Won't they germinate next spring and start the trouble all over again?
No, Prime Minister. We've discovered that the seeds decay rapidly if they don't germinate within 3 weeks. The Exon strain is a leguminous plant, the same order as peas and beans, the first frost or near frost, and it's dead. By next spring, the Exon strain will be extinct.
Unless migrating birds carry the seeds south.
That's why I've sent samples of the Exon strain to every country in the world. The World Health Organization and the United Nations, so that they can identify the plant and carry out research.
You've done what? Who gave you the right to do that?
You did. You said I was to wipe out
Did you know about this, Blowers?
No, sir. It's the first I've heard about it.
There was no danger, gentlemen. They were sent in sealed containers.
I don't give a damn what they were sent in. By doing that, you've as good as told the world that we don't have a solution to the Exon strain.
I'm not trying to take power away from you, Prime Minister. You'll find that the Exon strain will do that very nicely without help from me, if you try to keep this a domestic issue. If you want my resignation, you can have it. If you don't, and I'm not given a free hand, you'll have it anyway.
Yes, I'll have your P24s for you.
Day 2, 6.1 million. Day 4, 4.6 million. And 3.2 million plants handed in so far today. The trend is definitely downwards.
It doesn't mean a thing, Denise. I expected the figures to dive to almost zero on day 2.
Oh, you're getting too pessimistic in your old age, Max. The helicopters fitted with Exon detectors are proving to be a huge success, and 30 more going to service tomorrow.
How are things going with the new ultra-sensitive detector?
Oh, Howard went off this morning in a helicopter to test the prototype in mountainous regions.
Still nothing from the climatorium?
They're saying they might be able to come up with a selective weed killer in 6 years, not 6 days.
Yes, I can understand how they feel.
Oh, excuse me, miss.
Oh, yes, Corporal.
A report from Section 11, miss. A Lynx chopper that should have refueled at Bath an hour ago hasn't showed up or radioed its situation.
Well, should that concern me?
The helicopter is Charlie 7, miss. Captain Dyer said that I was to tell you.
Charlie 7?
That's right, miss. The one Mr. Howard Rogers is aboard.
Nothing. Nothing but rocks, crags, and valleys.
Well, with 10 other helicopters out searching, we're bound to find them before dark.
How long have we got?
Another hour, we'll find them, don't worry. Helicopters don't often crash. Their rotors prevent them dropping too quickly. They windmill down like a sycamore seed.
Everything looks so deserted down there. You'd think there'd be hundreds of people out looking for the plants.
This area was pretty well combed by hikers on day 1.
2 o'clock, near the woodland.
Yeah. It looks like a lynx, or the remains of one. Charlie 8 to Delta 9 have sighted Charlie 7 in search square 018. Going down to investigate.
Howard! Howard!
Oh, well, here's the pilot. Poor bastard.
Howard!
Don't let us see him. Cover him up.
Well, what have you found? It's Howard. You found Howard?
No, Denise, it's not Howard. I swear it's not Howard.
Then where the hell is he?
We'll find him when the relief helicopter arrives.
No.
It's no good trying to comb rough country like this by ourselves. Denise, come back.
If you can't be bothered to look for him, then I will.
Oh, he could be anywhere. Yes. What do you reckon happened?
Rotors are smashed. Pilot probably tried to fly too low and clipped a tree. Easily done.
I found something, Max. It looks like a trail of blood. Howard!
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 Howard! We'll have to separate. Pick up the trail again. You check that clearing while I circle round. Give a shout if you find anything.
It's okay. Max! Quickly!
What's the matter?
I don't believe it. Look.
Oh, hell.
It can't be one, Max. It's too big. They don't grow to that size.
Well, this one has.
Max, it's impossible.
It's real, all right. Another one over there, and another one. I'd say this clearing and the plants is what Howard spotted from the helicopter.
Howard! 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 He's here. Max!
What?
Max! Howard? Howard, it's Denise. Can you hear me, darling? Max, look at the colour of his face.
Looks like he's lost a good deal of blood.
Darling.
No. Don't try to move him.
He will be all right, won't he, Max?
Here's the relief helicopter. There'll be a doctor and stretcher on board. We'll be able to fly him straight to hospital.
Then there was this terrific bang, and the helicopter suddenly seemed to shake itself to pieces before it crashed. We weren't much more than 30 feet up. There was a pain in my leg. Crawled out of the wreckage. The first thing I saw was the pilot. I could see there was nothing I could do for him. So I thought I'd try and find the clearing.
You'd seen it from the air?
Thought the plants were a trick. You've seen them?
20 of them.
The tallest one was over 8 feet high.
8 feet? So what are they?
We don't know yet. We'll have to see if the seeds replicate their parents. But it looks as if the Exon strain has produced its first hybrid. In other words, we might have a super Exon on our hands.
We're not interested in understanding it. Your job is to destroy it. Project the daily figures forward and we'll still be uprooting those damn plants by the million at the end of October when the birds have left. And now you tell me you've discovered a colony of giant Exons growing happily in Wales. Aren't you ever the bearer of good news?
Well, we're having a fine summer, which is likely to delay the main migration.
And if it turns foul, which isn't exactly unknown, the damn birds will hop it early.
Yes.
Thanks for the good news.
I'm trying to be honest with you, Prime Minister. We don't have the answer, but I'm 100% sure that we will. The problem is not whether or not we can produce a selective herbicide. It's whether it can be produced quickly enough in sufficient quantities to spray the entire country by mid-September at the very latest. Now, I suggest you set up an operational research team to look at the logistic problems, the number of helicopters that will be needed and so on. Because you might discover that you'll have to swallow your national pride and go cap in hand to the United Nations. Back to the climatorium, Denise.
Don't you think you ought to have a night's sleep, Max?
Politicians. Pah! Do you know the first thing he said to me? He waded straight in, saying he had grave doubts about my ability to solve the problem.
Ah, he made himself objectionable.
He didn't make himself objectionable. He is objectionable.
I don't think so, Max. Blowers warned me about Craig's technique. When he wants something done by someone, he deliberately makes himself unpleasant by suggesting it can't be done. Then that someone tries to prove him wrong by doing it. Something else I found out. Craig is an old friend of Alco's chairman, Sir Miles Stratton.
Oh, Denise, I'm sorry, but I'm not interested at the moment, really.
No, but Alco makes substantial yearly cash gifts to Craig's party. No secret. It's in their annual accounts. £500,000.
£500,000? Wow.
Every June. Except this year. For some reason, Alco have withheld payments.
Well. I see. Now, that is interesting.
Something for you to sleep on. I'm taking you home.
The climatorium, young lady. I want to see how the seeds of those Welsh plants are doing.
Here they are. row 35.
But they're still the same height as the other Exon, and not more than a couple of feet high.
Which means that those plants from Wales are freaks, hybrids whose seeds produce ordinary Exon. The super Exon doesn't exist.
Now, why should a clearing in some woodland in Wales produce such giant plants? At first light tomorrow morning, I want you to send as many helicopters and men as you can to that clearing. Bring back 4 tons of topsoil and 4 tons of subsoil, but don't mix them. Now, there's some space over here. Spread the subsoil out and put the topsoil on top, just as it is in the clearing.
I can't spare helicopters for that. What about using trucks?
The place is inaccessible and lines will be too slow.
You wouldn't like the turf as well.
Good thinking, Blores. Yes, we'll have the turf shipped into the climatorium as well. It goes on top of the topsoil. Green side up, remember?
May I ask why you want to import chunks of the Welsh countryside?
What? And have you thinking I'm mad? He looks disgustingly well.
Well, no, disgusting, yes.
Of course I'm well. Back home in civilised surroundings. A de-starched nurse seeing to my every whim.
Packeting?
Well, almost every whim. You look pleased with yourself?
Yes, well, at last I feel I might be about to achieve something.
Yes, that's how I felt first thing this morning, but she wouldn't play ball.
I won't be a minute. Make sure he eats his breakfast, Max.
All right. Why don't you two get married?
Why plan for a future when there might not be one? Oh, I can't eat this stuff.
I don't suppose you can remember much about that clearing.
Not really. All I can remember is falling into rhododendron bushes. My leg was hurting so much I could hardly see where I was going. Mm-hmm. Why?
Did you say rhododendron bushes?
It's our beloved Alfred Blowers with an odd message for you, Max. He says your little piece of Wales is ready, and what shall he do with it?
Tell him to plant a couple of dozen Exon Strain in it. Now, think carefully, Howard. Are you certain it was a rhododendron you fell in?
It's something that I felt was far too important to come to you through the bag. That's why I returned to London on the first available Concorde.
It's about those plants that Max Flinders sent to every member country. Oh, don't look so surprised. I guessed the bisquawks sooner or later. So what's being hatched in New York?
There's a small investigating committee reporting direct to the Secretary-General. They know how fast the Exon strain can spread, the density it can reach, and the likely effect on the Earth's atmosphere.
Who told you about this committee?
The Secretary-General.
And we're not represented?
No.
And what did you say?
I told him that we're on the verge of producing an insecticide that will wipe out the Exon strain.
Good, good.
Are we?
No.
Well, he gave me this report on a series of tests carried out on atmospheric samples taken from this country. It says there is strong evidence pointing to a significant increase in the atmosphere's oxygen level and a decrease in the nitrogen level.
Yeah, page 10.
Yes, I think so.
A significant increase. This report is talking in terms of several decimal places of 1%. I don't call that significant.
They do.
Go back to New York and tell them that we're dealing with the situation in our own way.
It's not as simple as their Prime Minister.
It's extremely simple, Mr. Sachs.
They're concerned for the entire world. They say that the Exon strain is a threat to mankind's existence.
The United Nations doesn't have a monopoly on concern.
Well, they're giving us 30 days to eradicate the Exon strain by our methods. Otherwise, they say that they will be forced with great reluctance to use theirs.
What methods?
It's a scheme that will involve the air forces of all the major powers operating under a single UN command. They're sending an observer, a Miss Anderson.
What methods?
They'll use a concentrated total herbicide to aerial spray every square inch of the country.
They'll what?
They'll defoliate the entire country so that there won't be a single tree or blade of grass left by the time they're finished.
But, Max, they can't be ordinary Exon strain. They're well over 6 feet high. They're just like the ones I found in the clearing.
Tell him, Alfred.
They've been grown from ordinary Exon seeds. The difference is that they're growing in soil that was taken from the clearing in Wales, where you found the giants.
So the soil's unique?
Different. For one thing, it's very acid, with a pH level of 4. That's why rhododendrons were flourishing. They like acid soils. The other thing is that the soil is extremely rich in one particular trace element, copper. And that's the one trace element that the Exon strain likes.
Acid soils make more copper available to plants than they would be able to get with the neutral soil that all farmers aim for.
You see, we've been looking at the problem the wrong way round. These giants are normal Exon strain plants, and the 2-foot-high average height plants that grow throughout the country are poor, stunted things.
Normal? These?
Take a look at these Exons over here.
Oh, they're dying, aren't they?
Better than that, they're dead. We made up an ordinary soil for them, but we left out copper. We've done what I said we would do. We found the Exon strain's Achilles heel. All we need now is Paris's arrow. I'm sorry, Prime Minister. I'm not being rude to Miss Anderson, but I'm astounded that the UN should even consider such a barbaric plan.
I agree, Flinders.
Please, gentlemen, we agree it's barbaric, but what alternative is there? None. Defoliation of this country is the only guaranteed method of being absolutely certain of destroying the Exon strain. It's a terrible thing to have to do, but there's no choice. The operation starts on the 1st of September and will be followed by massive food aid. Already ships are being prepared.
But we have informed the Secretary-General that Mr. Flinders and his team have discovered a way in which the plant can be destroyed.
Yes, this herbicide you sent us samples of. You say it was developed last year by Earlco and is still experimental, yes?
It's not a herbicide in the strict sense of the word. It's a sequestering agent. That is, it isolates excessive trace elements in the soil. It was originally developed by Earlco for use in those parts of the world which have excessive trace elements in their soil.
Yes, I understand, Mr. Flinders. An excess of trace elements can lead to poor crop yields just as a deficiency can.
The point is that we can treat the entire country with sequestron and so eliminate the Exon strain completely. The winter will finish off the odd Exon that is missed, and the only crops we lose are those that depend on copper.
Nothing compared with the appalling ecological damage that defoliation will do to the country, Miss Anderson. Now, we're about to switch every chemical plant in the country over to sequestron production.
It can't be done, Mr. Prime Minister. We have reports from every major chemical concern in Europe and the USA. They all say it'll take at least 2 weeks to build the necessary processing plant. We have gone into the figures most carefully, I promise you. Also, MIT do not think that winter will destroy the Exon strain.
Well, of course it will. Good Lord, woman. The Exon strain is a leguminous vegetable.
Have you tried growing them under icy conditions?
But no, we haven't. It's not necessary.
Perhaps it would be a good idea. I will see that the MIT report is sent to you immediately, but now I have a plane to catch. You do understand, of course, that everything will be done to give your country unstinting assistance during the coming winter.
Atkin, Miss Anderson is leaving now. See that she has a car to take her to the airport.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. I would like to wish you good luck.
This way, please, Miss Anderson.
Yeah. Wasn't defoliation tried by the Americans in Vietnam?
A lunatic exercise that failed miserably. Destroying the top growth of the jungle to do away with cover for the Viet Cong merely allowed sunlight to reach the jungle floor, where it stimulated lush undergrowth that gave the Viet Cong more cover than they had before. Now there's so much ground cover that the trees can't re-establish themselves. The birds and wildlife that depended on the trees have been driven away, and the parasites the birds fed on have multiplied. The ecological balance of vast tracts of Vietnam has been destroyed for good, and it will destroy this country for good just as effectively as if we'd been plastered with thermonuclear weapons. Can you even begin to imagine what the countryside will look like with nothing green growing? Absolutely nothing.
I've tried.
And consider the after effects. If we have a wet autumn and winter, our topsoil, which has taken God another many million years to form, will be washed away. If we have a dry autumn and winter, the country will be turned into a giant dust bowl. Either way, we lose.
How much sequestron have we got?
Just about enough to deal with the damn things if we knew exactly where they were. But nothing like enough to spray the entire country in 28 days. Now, if we could come up with a positive method of locating the plants, we might have a chance.
But now, there's another problem on the way.
What's that?
MIT, saying that the Exon strain will survive the winter.
God, yes, I'd forgotten that.
Odd, isn't it? Frost in midsummer.
Hey, I think you're right, Max. These Exon strain look okay.
Yes, I wouldn't have believed it possible.
What, Max?
Do you know why frost kills tender plants? As the water in them freezes, it expands and ruptures the plant's cell structure.
Maybe they are dead, Max. It hasn't been below freezing in here for long.
I know when these things are dead. Is there any difference between them and those weeds?
Well, only that the weeds have frost on them and the Exon strain haven't.
Exactly. MIT were right.
About what?
Something that we should have discovered but didn't because, like the idiots we are, we weren't looking for it. We didn't even bother to carry out a simple experiment by exposing the plants to low temperatures.
But, Max, they must die. The entire destruction factor has been based on the assumption that they wouldn't survive the winter.
That's right, an assumption. But no amount of frost can harm the Exon strain.
Did my father know that?
I don't think so. Whatever the reasons were for Elko stopping his research, I doubt if it had anything to do with those amazing plants possessing futile cycling.
Possessing what?
What?
Oh, for years biologists were baffled by the activity of the bumblebee in cold weather, would you believe it? Unlike other insects, you see, the cold didn't make them lethargic. They flew about happily in winter, ignoring all the rules. Oh, yes, there's a lot of truth to the old saying about busy bees.
Well, what's this got to do with these plants being able to withstand frost?
It was discovered that bees had the curious ability to convert glucose into another chemical, and then back to glucose. It was called a futile cycle. But nothing in nature is ever futile. That was a product of futile cycling. Energy in the form of heat. The bumblebee is busy all year simply because it is warm all year.
And the Exon strain has this futile cycling?
Yes.
It will survive the winter.
Yes, except it won't get the chance. Look, what I have to say to you cannot be divulged to anyone. In 20 days, a United Nations task force will mount a massive aerial assault on this country. They'll spray every square inch with a particularly vicious butyric acid herbicide, the object being the total annihilation of all plant life, the length and breadth of the country.
You'll find the entire operation profile in this manual, Prime Minister. And this envelope contains the map appendices. The first wave, that's the first UN airborne group, will consist of 200 B-52 strategic bombers.
The good old B-52.
Which will cover western England and Wales on a north-heading sweep commencing at 0600 hours on the 1st of September. There will be an interval of 2 hours, and then the second airborne group, a wave of 200 Antonov 22s, will sweep southwards. Well, as you can see, there's a slight overlap of the area covered by the previous group.
To make sure that nothing is missed, Miss Anderson.
Yes.
And how long will this go on for?
6 days. The zones have been carefully worked out so that the evacuation program can be carried out with the minimum inconvenience.
Who has the authority to call the whole thing off? The Secretary-General?
Yes.
Then we should arrange a hotline between his office and this.
Agreed. But I must warn you, Prime Minister, that he can only call off the operation if you can come up with an alternative method of dealing with the Exon strain by the 1st of September. We're terribly sorry that this should have to happen.
I suppose we can't blame the United Nations. What's one country when the entire bloody planet is threatened?
When will you make the announcements?
I'm having a meeting with my colleagues in half an hour.
Don't you even have a vague plan for destroying this plant?
Miss Anderson, the only scheme that exists is yours. We have nothing.
Max can swim well. I wish you wouldn't trickle hot sand on my tummy, Howard.
I feel guilty.
About what?
Lying in the sun doing nothing.
What is there to do?
Denise, I ought to go and see my father. Well, at least before Wednesday, when the announcements are made.
All right, we'll drive up on Tuesday.
You don't understand. I ought to go up and stay with him. Permanently. He's always wanted me to do.
Well, what would be the point? You know next to nothing about market gardening. And there won't be a market garden to
He's
run.
got 6 large glass houses that he's given up running. Now I could help him repair them. Get the boilers working so that he'll still be able to earn a living. It'll kill him if he loses everything.
I see.
You don't have to come.
No.
I mean, I'll stick to our agreement.
Mutual non-interference when we both sense that the time has come.
Yes.
And you think the time for us has come.
I've been feeling miserable about it, just not knowing what to do. I can't leave him alone. The market garden's been his whole life. 50 years he's worked that 10 acres. If it's destroyed, he'll do something stupid. It will be on my conscience for the rest of my life.
And you can't ask me to share a Swede-bashing life in the wilds.
Well, of course not.
Why not?
I'm sorry?
Why can't you ask me?
Well, because... You mean you'd come with me?
You'd be an absolute menace trying to repair greenhouses on your Todd.
You'll come?
Yes.
Oh. Hey, a market garden's all wellies and water butts.
So?
Would you also consider going the whole hog, missy?
Is that a proposal?
Yes.
What a delightful way of putting it.
Well, it's hard being romantic to a girl who's got a dead crab on her stomach.
I haven't.
You have now.
Howard, you swine!
Hello! A lover's tiff! Well, I'll go back in the sea if you like.
It's all right, Max.
It's not all right. I proposed to her, and that's the thanks I get.
After a thump like that, I wouldn't have thought there was much point in getting married. Anyway, congratulations.
Hey, sandwiches, anybody?
Oh, how lovely.
Oh,
thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I don't mean to sound sentimental, but I suppose it gives me confidence. You two planning for the future?
All I'm planning is revenge.
15 days to go. All over the world. Aircraft are being made ready.
Only 300,000 plants were handed in yesterday, according to the paper. 1 paragraph tucked away on an inside page.
Yes. I tried to persuade Craig to increase the reward, but he said it was too late. Well, he's right. People have just lost interest, now that they're getting difficult to find.
I noticed an Exon in the middle of the brambles at the back of the car park. No one interested in it.
How many aircraft will be used?
About 5,000. Most of them being massed in the Soviet Union, I expect.
Don't we know?
UN are keeping it a secret.
I thought we'd know from surveillance, satellites. Isn't it possible to learn everything from satellites these days?
Well, just about. Yes, especially during these exceptionally clear weather conditions. Good God!
Oh, what's the matter?
Yeah, get packed up. We've got to get back to London.
What do you think, Blowers?
It's a crazy notion.
Will it work?
I honestly don't know, Prime Minister.
Yeah. Well, it's a straw. A miserably frail straw, but it's the only one we've got. What is this EROS 10 exactly?
EROS stands for European Resources Observation Satellite. It was launched from Kenya last year.
But we have control of it.
The tracking centre is at Slough. It's under the direction of Sir Sinclair Scott.
Excellent. I shall draft an order to Scott telling him he's now working for Flinders.
With respect, Prime Minister, all scientists hate all other scientists, and Flinders and Scott are particularly prickly characters. Do you not think it better if I were in charge in case they fight?
2 responsible men aware of the crisis? Nonsense.
I never heard such a stupid idea.
Why?
Because it won't work. It can't work, that's why. Using a satellite to locate individual plants.
But you're using EROS on behalf of Brussels to locate illegal crops being grown within the EEC.
Not yet. The politicians are confining us to providing an early warning system on crop discoloration that indicates the onset of disease.
Now look, Scott. EROS is nothing more than a highly sophisticated orbital multispectral scanner, right?
Yes, but it can't
And it can identify, even at its present height, crops in fields no bigger than quarter of a hectare.
Precisely, but it is its height which makes it useless for what you want. It's in a near circular polar orbit with a 20,000-mile perigee.
Oh, hell, that I didn't know.
And it has an orbital period of 20 hours, which means that during the next 14 days, we will only get 2 sweeps over this country.
But Eros has a set of vernier rockets.
Yes, they are for performing fine maneuvers. Why?
How much fuel have they?
Well, I don't have that sort of information at my fingertips.
You have the command keyboard at your fingertips, Scott. What's the code for a fuel situation interrogation?
Oh, all right. 10 litres. Enough to maintain Eos's parking orbit for 200 years.
And enough to bring it down to a new parking orbit?
Yes, but any such major manoeuvre is completely out of the question because there won't be enough fuel left to return it to its correct orbit. I'm sorry.
Well, Blawers has been doing some investigating for me, Scott. Now, he believes that at a height of only 400 miles, the multispectral scanner on Eros is capable of detecting and accurately locating individual exon strains.
You've been talking to my staff behind my back.
Blower's methods are his affair, but it's true, isn't it?
Possibly, but bringing Eros down to 400 miles is something that we cannot possibly do in any circumstances.
Why not?
I'm not prepared to discuss it with you.
You've seen this letter from the Prime Minister.
It makes no difference.
Okay, let's discuss it with him.
Spare me the technical details. Is it or is it not possible to bring Eros down to 400 miles?
Yes, indeed, sir. But
Very well, then, do it.
But we can't, sir.
I don't care if it does mean that the satellite's useless for future work. If we can show the UN's observer that we have a viable alternative scheme to locate and destroy every exon strain in the country within 10 days, then they will cancel the defoliation operation.
Bringing Eros down to 400 miles will mean that it will be so low it will be orbiting the Earth once every 88 minutes.
That's what Flinders told me. Fine. That's the height that will give the computers the resolution they need, and it means a dozen passes over the country instead of 2, correct?
We don't know for sure that the scheme will work, sir. And besides, an 88-minute orbit is at the critical height whereby drag from the Earth's atmosphere will cause rapid orbital decay. The satellite will re-enter the atmosphere.
And burn up. So what? It will have served its purpose. Satellites are expendable.
Prime Minister, Eros 10 is 4 tons of extremely compact hardware. It's unlikely that such a large satellite will burn up completely.
Okay, so there's a 1 in 10 million chance of a lump of debris causing damage. I'm ordering you to go ahead.
Then you don't know what Eros 10 uses for its power supply.
No, and I don't care.
It's a miniature Snap-8 nuclear reactor that was purchased from the United States on the understanding that it would be used only in a satellite that was positioned in a safe parking orbit above 10,000 miles. If Eros 10 is brought down to 400 miles, it will break up on re-entry and release 110 kilos of enriched, highly radioactive uranium into the environment.
Does he expect us to sit around another day in this damn place while he makes up his mind?
There's the satellite again.
What's the bleeping for?
That tells us that Eros is maintaining a correct orientation and that all is well with it.
Flinders? Yes, sir. We can start right away. Start pressing your button, Scott. He's finally made up his mind.
Eros should be rising above the horizon in 30 seconds on her new orbit. The controllers have to concentrate. Can we have absolute quiet, please?
Naturally, there'll be an unholy row when it comes down. And we'll probably have to fork out a fortune in compensation and the cost of finding all the bits.
Yes, rather that than defoliation.
Exactly. The delay was getting our attractive UN observer over there to agree. Miss Anderson is the most powerful person in the country at the moment. She'll be the one who'll advise the Secretary-General to call off the defoliation operation.
Or tell him to go ahead.
Yes.
The maneuver to bring Eros down to 400 miles has been successfully completed. We'll start the scanners in 3 minutes.
Congratulations, gentlemen. The first hurdle is over.
So it seems.
How many orbits will you need to scan the entire country?
7.
And how does the system work, please?
Well, basically, the pictures are fed in digital form into the computer, which has been programmed to respond only to the spectrum. The light pattern, that is, of the Exon Strain. The computer will then oblige us by providing a neat printout that lists the exact position of every individual Exon Strain in the country.
Even those growing under trees?
Miss Anderson, you see, when that line printer starts churning out its lists, you can be the first to tell a helicopter crew exactly where they'll find the first plant.
Oh, dear, oh, dear. You look finished.
How's it going, Scott?
Quiet word with you, gentlemen. We've completed 6 scans, but Eros' orbit is decaying fast. As you can hear, we're having trouble keeping her scanners correctly orientated.
But she will last the final orbit.
I don't think so.
It's got to, damn it. We've got to get a 100% scan of the entire country. Otherwise, the UN go ahead with the defoliation operation.
We're doing our best, sir.
What is the matter with the satellites?
The first results. It's working. It's actually working. Look at them. Thousands of entries. Oh, there you are, Miss Anderson. Now, sit yourself down at the console. That's it. Now then, that's the map.
This number?
That's the one. Hold on. Section 55. That's Sennen Cove, near Land's End. The nearest unit is helicopter Charlie 8. Now, here we are, Miss Anderson. Punch out Charlie 8's channel. Eros, control to Charlie 8. Do you read? Over.
Roger, Eros Control. This is Charlie 8 reading you loud and clear. Over.
Stand by for a grid reference, Charlie 8. It's so close to you, there's no need for you to take off. You can walk to it. Over.
Roger, Eros Control. Standing by. Over.
That's the number. Just my voice.
Hello, Charlie 8. Grid reference reads as follows: 27073940. Over.
Roger, Eros Control. Grid reference reads 27073940. Stand by.
It's only 50 yards from where they are.
What will have to be proven from all these map references is that Eros has the ability to detect single plants, not merely colonies of the plants.
It's 100% certain that all the colonies have been located and destroyed, Miss Anderson.
It sounds as if your satellite is in trouble.
We've just received a signal from NORAD. The Canadians don't think Eros will survive another orbit. They've timed the last orbit at 87 minutes 30 seconds.
Is that bad?
It's slowed down significantly. 86 minutes is the point when orbital decay is immediate.
You must have achieved a complete scan of the entire country if I'm to recommend calling off the defoliation to the Secretary-General. He's made it absolutely clear that I must have no doubts whatsoever that you can locate every plant.
Charlie 8 to Eros Control. How do you read? Over.
Loud and clear, Charlie 8. Did you find anything?
I had some trouble.
Dear God, no.
Because it was under some bracken. But it was right where you said it would be, within a yard of the grid reference position.
Now listen carefully, Charlie 8. How many plants were there?
How many?
Yes?
Well, that's why we had trouble. There's only the one, and it's no more than 3 inches high.
Yes. Yes, that's correct. Yes, we lost all telemetry a few seconds ago. Yes, thank you. Please keep me informed. That was NORAD. Eros is now burning up in the upper atmosphere. NORAD are tracking the debris and are predicting that they'll impact in polar regions, which means we've lost our final scan.
I'm extremely sorry, gentlemen. Believe me, very sorry indeed. If this could have ended any other way. If I could use the phone, please. Operator, I wish to put a call through to New York. I have a special number for you.
Now, let's just wait a minute.
I'm sorry, Prime Minister, but I have to make that call.
Flinders, what area of the country have we lost by not having that last scan?
East Anglia.
One of your most fertile regions, yes?
And one of the flattest. We now know where every Exon strain in the country is except East Anglia. So we concentrate all our audio detector-equipped helicopters in that region to hunt for the Exon strain and deploy all our other conventional forces throughout the rest of the country to destroy individual plants in their known locations. Is that feasible, Mr. Flinders?
Yes, we'll fly you over East Anglia today, Miss Anderson. And you'll be able to see for yourself just how easy it will be to eliminate the Exon strain.
Well,
The telephone's there, Miss Anderson, if you want to use it.
What's the flame gun for?
My last task is to ensure that every Exon strain in this climatorium is destroyed.
They're the only ones left, aren't they?
The only ones left in the world, Denise.
It doesn't seem possible. It's like a bad dream.
Do we have to burn them all? Couldn't we just save a few to continue Daddy's work?
Do you think he would want us to take that risk, Denise?
No.
Do you know why Urkel stopped his research? Because beans and peas fertilize the soil they're growing in by fixing nitrogen in that soil. And the Exon strain fixed huge quantities of nitrogen. You see, the Urkel board thought it would ruin their entire fertilizer industry. The final irony about the whole business is that we'll have bumper crops next year.
Well, that's it. No more Exon strain.
Oh, there's one there you missed. Here. The last one.
No. Let me do it. Give me the flame gun. Thank you. There. It's done. Now, take me home, please, Howard.
Oh, by the way, Blows, you knew I deliberately avoided answering Miss Anderson about our ability to detect Exon strains growing under trees.
I guessed.
We need time desperately. I ought to thank you for keeping quiet, but I'll save it for next year, when we know for certain if we really have beaten them.
In World Without Fire, by James Follett, Max Flinders was played by T.P. McKenna, Howard Rogers by Paul Copley, and Denise Exon by Rosalind Adams. Blowers, Michael Shannon. The Prime Minister, Noel Johnson. Miss Anderson, Diana Olson. Scott, Gerald Cross. Sax, Dennis Gosher. The helicopter pilot, Peter Wickham. The TV presenter, Henry Knowles. The captain and the technician, Rod Beecham. The flight officer and corporal, Gregory de Paulnay. The flight engineer and the farmer, Roy Spencer. And the television PA, Mary Elliott Nelson. Special effects by Lloyd Silverthorne, and technical assistance by Carol McShane and Diana Barkham. The play was directed by David Spencer.